Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here in my home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania. Oh boy, it's been a busy day today. Hopefully, you all have had a great week so far. And yeah, so we've had a lot going on lately, and I had some plans for tonight, but then I was like, you know what? I'm a little bit tired, and so I could use a break and thought maybe y'all could use one too. So instead of doing a tutorial or posting more lots or anything like that, I thought we could just hang out. How about that? I've got some things that I'm working on, and I thought it might be fun to show you some of the progress on those things. And yeah, so we can chat while we kind of look at stuff. How about that? So if you're watching, say hello and where you're from. It's always nice to hear where people are tuning in from. I always think it's interesting. William couldn't come tonight because he is headed out to do the wood firing for one of his pottery classes that he's taking. It's a big firing that they do, and it takes, I think, 52 hours or something like that. So they're meeting up there at the farm, and they're loading up the kiln and signing up for 6 hour shifts. So they're going to be busy, busy, busy firing that up. I think it's super cool. They have a kiln like that. I don't know if it's like the same kind. But there's one at Touchstone where they have to be up like all night and they take shifts and stuff. Um, and I know it's a big process, but the things that they make are really cool. So I'm excited to see what they make. I don't even know um, if he had a chance to glaze his pieces or not. I don't know if you can glaze those. I've never done that kind of process. I've done raku, but I have not done that kind of wood firing that takes a super long time. Um, I see Marianne's watching. Hi, Marianne. Yeah, we've had a busy day. It's one of those ones where it doesn't seem like it's busy, but when you look back, well, I shouldn't say that. We had a busy day in that it just seems all kind of jumbledy. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, we've just been, I don't know. I just feel a little bit discombobulated with all this stuff that we've got going on. So I've got a bunch of meetings I've been doing today. So we try to get into this one art show, and unfortunately we didn't get into it. However, I talked with a partnering organization, and then they're going to try to get us in through that way. So I think we're in this one show that's coming up in December, but I'm not 100% sure yet. So we'll see. I'm hopeful because that would be nice to have a couple shows. We've been talking about this lately um, with some different people, and we've always kind of shied away from doing shows. Um, and one of the reasons why is I used to do trade shows back in the day, and so I was a little bit burnt out on that. Um, and then when we opened the store, um, we some of our customers were going to be in the same shows, and so we didn't really necessarily want to like compete with our customers and some of our helpers and things like that. So we've kind of shied away from doing shows for a long time. But then I don't know. I kind of feel like it might be time to like get back in the swing of it. I know for me, I feel a little bit sometimes like I'm removed from the store because I don't work in the physical store anymore. So it would be nice to get out and about and meet people again and, you know, get kind of situated with new customers. And yeah. So I see a couple more people have tuned in. Marion says, so excited for William and the other Potters. Yeah, I don't think he showed y'all, but he brought back his last batch, and they turned out really good. Um, and it's hard for me because I want to keep everything, but then I know that it's good to share sometimes too. But also, I don't want to like claim all the early ones, and then he makes some new ones, and then I don't get any of the new ones because he's like, "You already got some." So we'll see. There's a couple that are really good that I kind of I'm like, well, if you don't want to get rid of that one, you don't have to get rid of that one. Um, Cheryl's watching. Hi, Cheryl. Donna's watching. She says, hello, all. Andrew, you guys have so many irons in the fire. Always interesting to listen to your activities. Yeah, we do have a lot of stuff going on. And I kind of would like to take some time to kind of like refocus. Um, it would be nice to like do that. I still haven't unpacked from my last class, and I really actually haven't unpacked from the class before that. So it would be nice to just like have time in the studio just to exist in that space and keep working on cleaning it up and stuff. But we keep doing stuff, and I'm interested to see. William will probably has been probably chatting with Jen throughout the day, but I'm curious to see how she likes or doesn't like the new back room, because I think today was the first day that she's seen the back room after some of the renovations. We're still in the process. It's going to be one of those things that. It's going to take some time for us to kind of iron out everything and figure out where we want things to go. And, it's one of those things where we have to live in the space a little bit to kind of see how everything flows. I know that sometimes that may not seem like it makes sense. Like, you can kind of draft everything on paper, but I also think that it's nice to like be in the space and then you kind of know naturally where things will go. So I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to work out. And if she has any feedback on things that she'd like to see, because one thing about this new space, we've been in here for years now. One thing about that our current brick and mortar space for the shop is that there's not a ton of storage. So one of the things that was nice about having that kind of back room area partitioned off was that we had a little bit of storage, and now we don't have as much storage. So we're going to have to think of some creative solutions on making everything fit. I'm also really of the mindset where I like whenever you're going into a retail space that everything kind of is neat and tidy and there's nothing kind of utilitarian out. I know that's not always possible, but I would like to build in some systems so that we can keep everything kind of looking nice. I mean, everybody tries and they do their best, but I think I see it differently because I'm not there every day. So I have fresh eyes and they're kind of like nose blind to some of this stuff, but we'll see. It's one of those things, it's a work in progress. Marianne says, fingers crossed you get in. Yeah, I would like to do it. I've been kind of planning out what I wanted to do for that show, and we'll see if I get everything done that I want to get done. I was doing some trials and tests, maybe last week, on some of the things that I was working on, and some of the things were not working out. And so I think I have to play with the kiln a little bit and adjust the temperatures and the firing times to get everything just right. But once that gets kind of locked in place, then I can kind of ramp up for production. I think that's always one of the hard things is like staying true to being an artist, but also having product to sell. Because if you don't have products to sell, you don't have product to sell. So you might as well not even do the show. So I think I'm going to try to start sooner than later because if I start later, it's always like a nightmare time where I'm up for like 4 days straight trying to crank stuff out. And let's just say that it's not the best version of myself that people encounter when I'm doing that. So we got a lot of things that we're working on. And so today was a lot of back and forth stuff with people and trying to figure logistics out. And then also, I think, sometimes stuff just takes time. Like, we talk about building community and building relationships with people, but those things all take time. And while I would love it to be something that happens like naturally and organically, a lot of times people are spaced out so much by distance that if you don't start like initiating those conversations with people, then those conversations don't naturally happen. So I've been kind of busy trying to track down some information and getting people kind of connected who need to be connected. And yeah, so I'm excited. We've got a lot of things to do. I always kind of plan more, and then if things don't work out, then at least we have more than if I planned less and things didn't work out. So it's kind of one of those things. It's a remnant from when I was a freelancer. I kind of felt like I was digging trenches when I was a freelancer. Excuse me. And the idea about digging trenches or digging ditches is that you're building in all these kind of like streams of revenue, and hopefully all those trickles kind of add up to keep your creative castle afloat. But you never know. So it's kind of one of those things that's like a leftover of that, where I just like say yes to everything and then figure out what falls off naturally. So let's see who else is watching. Susan's watching. Hi, Susan. Our neighbor. I see our neighbor is watching too. Hey, Susan. Susie. Speaking of the neighbors, I need to do that. I briefly glanced outside and saw the horrendous state of our flower beds, and I need to get in there and do something about that because they look frightening. So we'll see if I can do that. Maybe this weekend. If I have a thing tomorrow morning. I was supposed to do something tonight. I was supposed to attend an art opening, but since William's doing the firing, I decided to stay home. And so tomorrow I'm going to an artist talk in Pittsburgh at Contemporary Craft. It's on climate change and awareness. So it should be, I'm pretty interested in that. Some of the work that I'm doing that I haven't really talked about or shown too much about deals with that and sustainability and recycling and things like that. So I think it might be interesting to see how that works out. Teresa's watching. Hey, Teresa. Michelle's watching. Hey, Michelle. We were wondering if we haven't seen you for a while. And then William said that he saw that you were traveling. So I'm glad that everybody is okay. Susan says, Smoky Cat is joining the chat. He says meow. That's sweet. Yeah, so last night we thought everything, we're going to go to bed early. And then little Miss Tallulah, she had an accident in the bathroom and basically finger painted with poop all over the floors and some of the walls last night. And so that was hard. So we had to give her a bath and a haircut around her little bum hole so that she wouldn't have any of these problems. It's all fun and games to have a fluffy cat, but y'all, I'm not a fan of the poop smell. So I had to like hold my breath, and then it was getting super hot. And so it was kind of like a comedy of errors, but luckily she's okay and we're okay, and we got everything kind of situated. She's super silky soft today. Susan says, actually, mine didn't really meow either. Phil squeaks and Smokey squawks. That's cute. Michelle says, we went to Arizona on the 5th and got back last night around 4 a.m. Oh, boy. That's hopefully you had a good time. Marianne says, my cats rarely make sounds, period. Marianne asked Michelle if it was fun. Harry's watching. Hi, Harry. I've been enjoying some of the monoprints that you've been making lately. Those look cool. Michelle says, we saw our family friends we haven't seen since 30 years. It was great. Oh, that's good. And so, oh, poor kitten, and you too as well. Yeah, I don't know what exactly happened. Gertie, she was not interested in it at all. She was like, peace out. And so she ran out of the room, and she was like, she wasn't like being bad, but she was like running away. She didn't want to deal with it. And I was like, I understand. I feel you. I am there with you. If Tallulah didn't need our help, I would be with you as well. I wonder sometimes what our neighbors think, because we keep our windows open a lot, and so sometimes people hear. I'm sure they overhear us talking about the cats, and yeah, it's probably, I don't know what they think. Susan says, oh, that's awful about Miss Tallulah. Yeah, and also I didn't do the most even job of trimming. So her little butt looks a little bit lopsided, but I'm not going to do like I did with Babette, because I tried it when she had a problem at one point. And so I tried to trim and then it was lopsided. So I tried to even it out. And so I should probably mention, I'm not a barber or a hairstylist. And so it, like, her little patch on her hind end like grew and grew. And so, and Paolo at the time, when he saw her, he was like, he looked shook. He was like, what happened to you? And he was like looking, and she was like embarrassed. And so she's getting mad at him. I mean, people who don't think that cats have like rich emotional lives or conversations or whatever, I don't know. Y'all don't have cats, because I can see where they're definitely have personalities. Um, Susan says, that sounds like a wonderful trip. Michelle says it was. We were there for other reasons, but that didn't work out. But the plus side, we got to see our family and meet others of the family. It was a great trip. Oh, good. All right, so I'm going to flip the camera around, and you can take a look at what we're doing. And that way you don't have to like stare at my face while we're chatting, because really, like, I don't know, that's less interesting to me than actually looking at stuff to do. All right. So let me put this here. So you may remember at one point I showed you how to make this armature out of tin foil and masking tape. And then I'm working on covering this. But like with everything else, I have not had much time at all to work. And so I've only gotten like every little bit of time I've had, like, whenever when we're getting ready for a live here at the house and I have like a minute or something, sometimes I'll work on it while William is talking, excuse me, and showing stuff. So I haven't had a lot of time to work on it. So I thought maybe I could do that and we could like chat a little bit. Marianne says, Tear is purring for me. And Susan says, cats are very sensitive beings. For some unknown reason, this morning, Smokey kept breaking into the bathroom when one of us was in the shower. Oh boy. June's watching. Hey, June. Teresa says, pouring rain here, thunder and lightning. It's pretty nice out today, but I can sense that the pressure is building because my head kind of hurts a little bit. But all right. So where am I? So I don't actually know how you do this for real. I've kind of just made up my own way of doing this kind of bead embroidery technique. So I can't speak of how to do this. I don't know. I don't know exactly how to do this the real way. I don't know if there's like a right way and wrong way to do it. I just kind of do it. And then, oh, and if you didn't see, this is my Inspired by Reading book club project. I might do more. We're rescheduling the meetup for August and September for October 9th. I believe that's the date. And we're going to talk about braiding sweetgrass, and we're going to talk about the invisible hour. And yeah, so that's what I made for that. I'll talk more about that when we have the meetup, but that was on the desk, so I figured might as well. Why not? Marianne said, wanted to make sure you didn't drown. I'm guessing that's Smoky Cat investigating whether or not y'all are okay. And Harry says, my cat George loves to jump in the shower with me. He sits at the back of the tub. That's cute. Yeah, our cats are kind of weird. Like they're really into water. Um, and so whenever I turn on the sink, they all run to the sink. They're like super fascinated with it. I don't think they actually like it, but they're really interested in it. So that's kind of interesting. All right. So, yeah. So, are y'all working on any projects? So, I'm just going to talk you through how I do these. I've showed how to do this before, but in case you were wondering, I'm not going to like really go into super great detail, but yeah. So, I'm just going to tie a knot here at the end. And then do another, it's called a surgeon's knot. So you go and you do an overhand knot and then you do it again and you pull it through. That makes it nice and secure. So if you haven't seen throughout this week, we've been doing fundraiser lots and tool buyout lots and all kinds of stuff like that. And the reason why we're doing that is because there's a couple of opportunities that have been presented that help not only us, but help whoever we're buying stuff from. And so we've been doing those. So if you did not see those throughout the week, I recommend catching up on the replay. All right, so I came down and tied a knot and kind of hid the knot in the middle of the bead. So I'm going to take this needle and go back down through this bead, and that's going to create the thread bridge. And then for me, I also like to do this thing where I don't like my thread bridge to move around. So I'm just going to do a half hitch knot underneath this other piece of thread on the other side. And that seems to make things nice and easy and tight, or tighter. And then whenever I start a new row of brick stitch, and if I don't want to decrease, what I do is I take and add 2 beads. And there you go. I go underneath the thread bridge, pull that tight, and then go up through the bead that I just came out. And then that's basically how you start brick stitch. And I like brick stitch. It's one of those things where um, you don't actually have to think too hard. I guess if you're doing something and I don't know, brick stitch, I feel like you could make it more complicated, but it's fairly easy. And so a lot of these pieces I'm doing kind of is I make little sections and then I sew them in. And it says, mine do follow me into the bathroom, but usually leave when I shower. Susan says, both cats in their youth used to stare at water going down the drain. Barnaby, he stares at his water fountain. Like he just stares at it for sometimes a long time. Marcy says, hello, everyone. Going to have to watch replay to see what interesting green biz on the right. I mean, you don't have to really watch the replay because we're doing it now. But Harry says, my big projects today were 2 pairs of earrings with the bone beads from Alive, a necklace, and installing a new all-in-one Canon printer. The printer did not want to work with a USB. It wanted a phone. Michelle said, all I did was rest. Well, that's important too. Both William and I were kind of thunderstruck last night. So we usually I work at night, but I was like, I'm too tired. So I definitely went to bed, and he's listened to some kind of meditation tape, but he fell asleep with it on, and it was driving me crazy, y'all. Let me just tell you. Because it it was just loud enough that it was like somebody was whispering in my ear, but I could not hear what they were saying. So it's one of those things where like I can fall asleep to the TV all the time, no problem. But when it comes to something that's like almost I can hear it, but not quite, I don't know. I just couldn't sleep to it. So luckily at one point he turned it off because I was like, turn it off. And so there you go. And then I finally got to sleep. I used to be not very particular about sleeping. Like I could sleep anywhere. And nowadays I'm like princess style. I need like at least 2 pillows and preferably 3 pillows just in case I want to prop myself up. And I just have to can't be too hot, but it can't be too cold. And if it's too cold, I need a blanket, like a thicker blanket, but not too thick. So I don't like to feel like I'm suffocating. And I can't have an uneven surface. Used to all day, let's sleep under the table at a show and people would like kick me in the head. But nowadays, and I wouldn't even bat an eyelash kind of thing. But nowadays, I'm like, too loud, too loud. And it's so funny because I work primarily at night. So that means I sleep a lot during the day. And so, yeah, it's never, I don't know, it's not quiet necessarily during the day where we are. Like there's people cleaning the street or doing something. So I see Diane's watching. Hi, Diane. Marion says, I had a nap and watched some YouTube videos. I did decorate one of my document wallets, 3 more to pick the ephemera for, which is much harder than one might think. That sounds cool. I saw the one that you made the other day. It looked nice. Harry says, I use an Alexa device to play music for 15 minutes as I fall asleep. It usually shuts off early when a selection ends. Well, that's good. I used to read before I would go to bed, but then I noticed I was training myself that whenever I was reading, I was like preparing to go to bed. So that was not ideal because I was like doing stuff more like with the public and stuff, and I was like having to read stuff, and then I noticed I was getting like tired when I was reading. So I was like, I need to quit that because I don't need to train myself that, I already have weird sleeping habits anyway. I don't need another thing that makes me kind of doze off in public. Um, Susan says, I find the first half of Mercury retrograde is ideal for cleaning, straightening my studio, and redoing old projects. So I've redesigned some of my earrings and a necklace. Tomorrow is earring making day. Oh, that's good. Marianne says, I use a black screen, rain and thunderstorm videos. That's nice. Michelle says, we sleep with the TV on. I sometimes use my YouTube or some kind of app. That's good. Susan says, I play either chill out classical or jazz on my phone while I go to sleep. I like to read before bedtime. It's a favorite time of day. That's good. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I had I've been trying to sleep more because I know that I don't sleep as much as I probably should. But at the same time, I've not actually been trying that hard. But I probably should so that I don't develop any problems or something. Some people just naturally sleep less, but I would like to sleep more. Um, I think like sometimes I just lay in bed and I think about stuff that I have to do. And so instead of that, I just get up and try to do it because otherwise, I just lay there and think about it. So might as well just get it done, right? So Marcy says, we are 10 inches deficit in water. Teresa, we will take your water. We own a lawn care for now. I'm not sure how much longer, or a lawn care business. Diane says, we also sleep with the TV on. I use a sleep mask so the light doesn't bother me. I know you aren't really supposed to do that, but I can't sleep without something on in the background. I mean, whatever works, right? I think it's one of those things that, like, you just have to figure out what works for you and then do it. I'm a little bit nervous because I'm going to be in a shared dorm room situation at Aeromont in October, and I'm like, what? Like, I don't snore all the time, but sometimes I snore, and so I don't want it to be like, I don't know, snoring up the place and keeping people up. So we'll see how this works out. Maybe I'll try to do it, get research ways of not snoring, and do all the things I can do so that if I have roommates, they don't get driven to the brink of madness by sleep deprivation. But also, I don't know. I think I'm also mildly allergic to our cats. So I'd rather have cats than not, but I think I am allergic to them. So maybe being in a dust or cat dander free environment, I'll be able to sleep without snoring. We'll see. I also, and the other thing is that sometimes when I travel, I used to take NyQuil, but then the NyQuil started making me get dizzy. I don't know what that's about, but it used to make me get dizzy. It started to make me get dizzy and nauseous. And then some of them, they said, oh, well, there's a thing that's like NyQuil, but it doesn't have the breathing stuff in it. And I was like, I think the breathing stuff was nice because then I wouldn't snore and it would help me sleep also. but I also don't want to be all dizzy and trying to like load up the kiln. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some research on how I can be a good roommate. It'll be weird because I haven't stayed with. I take that back. I don't know. It'll be weird being away, but I'm excited for it. If you didn't know about this, I won a scholarship to Aramont to take an enameling workshop with Barbara McFadden. Um, and she's an enamelist and a book artist. And I'm super excited because I think that'll be fun. And I need to start saving money for that trip because that's coming up pretty soon. But I'm like one thing at a time. Marion says, my upstairs neighbor snores loudly. Diane said, that is loud if you can hear in your apartment, Marianne. Michelle said, wow, that's loud or really thin walls. Yeah, I used to sleep when we would do trade shows. Sometimes we would share rooms with people to save on money. And one of the people I used to share with snored very, very loudly. And so I always, always, always tried to fall asleep before he did so that I could sleep through it. So yeah. But it'll be interesting. I don't know. We'll see. I kind of wonder if there's going to be a lot of male students in the class. Maybe in the other things, you'll have to in some of the other things. I don't know if they do co-ed dorm rooms. I'm guessing not, but I don't know. I'm trying to save money, so normally I would get like a single, but if I did that, I probably couldn't go. So, because I have the scholarship I won covers mostly everything, but it doesn't cover all of the housing. It only covers part of it. So we'll see how that works out. Also, I got invited to participate in the short-term residency at Aramont called Pentaculum, which I'm kind of excited about because I see people post pictures from it and it looks really fun. And I was like, how do you get to go to this thing? And I got invited. So I was super excited about that because I'm pretty much, I'm not super well known in the metalsmithing world. At least I don't think so. I'm pretty new. So it's interesting to kind of navigate these things because like in the bead world I'm relatively well known, I guess. I don't know, it's all subjective really, but I have been doing it so long and used to write for books and magazines that it seemed only natural, I guess, but um, that people would start recognizing me. But nowadays, I don't know. I'm not as popular as as I probably used to be in the bead world. I don't really care about that as much. I know that it's good to have good numbers when we're doing stuff so that we can stay in business, but like I never really cared about having like being super popular, but I do realize that it's important for like building, your career, making connections and stuff like that, going to different events. And um, so I don't know. It's just weird kind of starting over again. I don't, I think it's been fun, which has been good because if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. But yeah. So Diane says, how long will you be there? At Aeromont for the first week, I'll be for the first. I'll be at Airmont for a week, and then the short-term residency at Pentaculum is also a week, but that's in January. But I have to pay for everything in September for that, so I'm a little bit nerve-wracked about that. Marion says, sounds do come from above. I don't think there is much soundproofing between the floors. Yeah, we at one point we had to soundproof a wall, and I think whenever we start doing stuff at the new building in Johnstown, we're gonna have to do a little bit of soundproofing because there is a tenant that's upstairs who rents an apartment from us. So if we have a hammering class, they might get driven and crazy from it because yeah, you'd be trying to watch your favorite show and then there's ding 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 ding. So there's these acoustic panels that we're looking into that should help dampen the sound transfer. There's also, when we soundproofed the annex, we use this stuff called green goop, and it turns sound into heat. So I don't know how it does that. Some kind of witchcraft of science. I don't know. But you put it on and you like sandwich in between like drywall is what we use, but you can do like thick felt or whatever. And so we put that on and it really did work. I mean, that stuff at one point it sounded like when we first moved into the annex, it felt like you could, like, she was whispering in your ear. It was so, the sound transferred so easily. But after we soundproofed it, you could hardly hear anything. And if you did hear anything, it'd be like subtle muffles. So I think we're going to get the acoustic tiles for the new building in Johnstown, so that just so that our tenants don't go crazy. The only thing that I worry about is that you have to glue those on, and I kind of hate the idea of doing that. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like a really intense wallpaper, basically. And either you love it or you hate it. But I think it will help a lot. So also, I think the other thing is that there's nothing inside of the new space at Johnstown. So it's kind of like it echoes a little bit in there. And so once there's more stuff in there, it will help take down some of the sound because it won't be like reverberating in this empty space. Marion says, don't usually hear anything from the apartments on either side. And then how many days is this, Andrew? Then I'm going to be in the dorm room. The first week is, I think, the 1st through the 6th. So I get in maybe on the 30th and then leave on the 7th. So it's like a week. I hear Gilbert. He's talking. I don't know if y'all can hear him. But anyway, so that's coming up. I'm excited about that. Tomorrow, in theory, is the Meet the Merchant event in Ligonier. They might have rain tomorrow, so I really don't know what we're going to do about that. I know we have a tent, but I'm not really involved with that, so I don't know anything about it. It's something that William and our neighbor at the candle place kind of came up with. So they're kind of taking the lead on it. So I don't really know. But that's in theory tomorrow evening. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go or not. Because I have some other plans that I was trying to get done tomorrow. So we'll see. I think it's one of those things where we're just like doing a lot of stuff. He also has to edit the video for Jen's tutorial tonight. So tonight's gonna be a busy night, yo. I'm excited for it. I always like them. It's nice to get a different perspective from somebody else sometimes, because I always get kind of like in my own my own kind of way of doing things. Man says, yes, here, Mr. Gilbert. Busy. Yeah, I like it to be a little bit busy, but I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to crave having a little bit more time to myself, and I know that that's not going to be possible for a while. So we're going to see how this works out, because I really haven't had a chance to you know, be in my own space for a while and work and make stuff. So it would be super nice to have that pretty soon. Because I get a little bit antsy if I don't make stuff for a while. Michelle says, I need to finish my 3-piece set. The necklace is almost done. Oh, good. Well, it seems like you're making progress. Yeah, we've been really busy, but I think it's one of those things where if I've always been like this, I've always had a lot going on, and even when I've been trying not to fill my schedule up super a lot, but I always manage to do that. So I'm excited if I get some time to myself, but if I don't, it's kind of like the normal. So I guess I can rest when I'm dead. So what else have y'all been working on? Have you been making anything? Have you been cooking anything? Watching any good shows or listening to music? We just finished watching Foundation on the Apple TV, and that's based off of an Isaac Asimov book. I think it's okay. I don't know. I get kind of confused sometimes, but that's the way, I guess. I guess anything like that is going to be confusing. Mostly, I've just been trying to work on stuff for the fundraisers so that we can get the tools. That has been kind of like the biggest priority lately. And I'm really want to get a sandblaster for the cottage, because after using that in the class, it was so nice. Because my least favorite part of like enameling or doing any kind of metal work is cleaning the metal. It's like the thing that I hate the most. Like, I like the process of certain things, and I like how it looks and what things kind of turn into, but I don't like to clean the metal. Because I've noticed that like my back hurts more, and this is probably a silly thing, but like if you're hunched over for long stretches of time, it can be really kind of annoying. So I don't really like to clean metal. And that's like one of the biggest things for enameling, is that the metal has to be super clean for it to stick. And so I don't like to do it, but if I get the sandblaster, it will make things a lot easier. And I already have the air compressor, so generally speaking, the sandblasting cabinets are not too expensive, and sometimes I see them come up on Facebook Marketplace for super cheap. So and then there's a big wide variety of like price points. Like sometimes the price points are like super, super duper expensive. Like I was looking at one and it was like $1,800. I was like, no, I'm not buying that. But there is one that is like $200, and there are videos on how you can kind of rig them up so that you don't have a bunch of leakage. Because sometimes with some of the cheaper ones, their problem is that they are kind of like bolted together, and sometimes like if you move stuff, the seams kind of like it adjusts so that stuff can spill out. So I don't necessarily want to have that spillage happening. So, because for one, it's not good for your health. And number two, it's not good, if you're in a space. I would also like to get one that I can put on like a cart system so that I can roll it out because, you know, if I can set it up on the porch when it's warm, that would be super great because I don't necessarily want to introduce more dust to the studio because there's already dust and I don't want to have more dust. We're working on getting the ventilation set up. So earlier this year, I won a grant from Surf Plus called the Get Ready Grant, and it's about fixing your studio so that you can have solutions for safety. And one of the things that I wrote the grant for was for improving our ventilation. And so um, we got the ventilation, and we got the blower. So now we just have to put the exhaust fan, or we have the exhaust fan. It's an inline fan, so it's super quiet. One of the ones that I used at one of the places I took classes, it was so loud. I thought I was going to go crazy because I couldn't hear anything because it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I was like, I cannot even. It's driving me to the brink of madness. And so we got a super quiet one, and I'm looking forward to that. Um, and then that way, when I run the kiln and stuff, and I use some of the China paints and stuff, when you work with China paints, sometimes you have to mix it with these different oils, and when the oils burn off in the kiln, they kind of smell not great. I mean, it's not I'm guessing it's not super toxic, but it's like some of the smells, like they smell good when they're going on, but then when they burn, they do not smell good. And so, um, yeah, so I'm excited for that to go in. Probably, I was hoping sometime this summer because I do have to report back on the grant of what we did with the money. So yeah, uh, hopefully this autumn we'll get that hooked up. I don't think it will be a big thing because when we put the ductwork in for this mini split system at the cottage, we had to get these special bits for our power drill, and we already have that. So I think it's just a matter of like drilling a hole and bolting an exhaust fan in, and kind of a thing that will prevent critters from coming in through that exhaust, which is basically a board that slides in place, and then just kind of bolting everything down and securing it. And um, we might have to ask Diane's husband to take a look at like the wiring stuff because um, I don't know. We might have to do that, but let's see. A couple of people have said some stuff. Marianne says, I will watch the fourth episode of The Wheel of Time later today. That's on our docket as well. Teresa says, made 50 of our sailboat earrings this morning at my oldest daughter's. excuse me, went to a concert yesterday at my special needs daughter's school where she sang 3 songs. Oh, that's nice. Barbara says, "Hey everyone, working and lurking. Big show tomorrow. Send money vibes. Sending out the money vibes." Michelle says, "Good luck. Sell lots." Marianne says, "Money vibes. I could also use those so I can buy more." Me too. I am also hoping you get money vibes, Marianne. Yeah, we've been, I don't know, it's been a weird summer. And I think part of it, and I was talking to William about this. So we do monthly meetings so that we can, you know, talk about the plans for the next month and kind of overarching ideas that we're working on. And we've had some plans that we've kind of had to put off and delay because we haven't had money to do them. And so, we make okay money, but it's definitely not pre-pandemic levels yet of how much we're pulling in. And so, I mean, we're making. I should rephrase that. We are making more money online now than we did before the pandemic. However, we're making significantly less money in store than we did before the pandemic. So, yeah, I think that's one of those things where the hope is that things keep getting better. It is better than it was before, but it's still not back yet. So the hope is that things continue to keep getting better, and hopefully we can make it work out. Um, you know, I think about things. I probably have like something's wrong with me where always think of like the worst case scenario. I think it's being a child of an immigrant who has a has um, who looks at life kind of like that. So it's something that I kind of just do naturally. So I always kind of look at what can go wrong, and in some ways it's good because we can prepare for the things that go wrong as opposed to just getting blindsided by them. And so we were talking about this, and in theory, we could move into like I don't want to say worst case scenario because there's way worse things that could happen. But in theory, we could move into the apartment the above the space in Johnstown, and then open the store out of there. And then that would cut our overhead expenses significantly because our rent in Ligonier on our brick and mortar is probably, I don't know, maybe 3 times as much as the rent our mortgage in Johnstown. So, yeah. So it doesn't necessarily make sense. Also, the rent will never go away, but our mortgage, if we paid what we paid now on our store, um, it could pay off in 7 years, and then we would be debt free. Um, but I kind of like our house, and I don't necessarily want to move, so there's that to also consider. Like maybe is it worth it to work harder? Somebody who once suggested selling the cottage, but the cottage is really not that expensive because we bought it so inexpensively. The issue with that is just like the maintenance and upkeep is what the biggest thing is that because it had sat empty for probably 10 years, there was a lot of stuff that we had to do to kind of get it ready. And there's a lot of stuff that we have to do still yet. Um, And so the cottage is not necessarily the thing that's causing the most drain on resources. It's the brick and mortar. Um, and so until those numbers kind of pick up, we're kind of in this weird space where we're thinking about, like, do we stay? Do we go? Um, you know, one of those things. Um, and also, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get a storefront in town that we own outright, because they come up so infrequently and they're so much more than surrounding areas. So, like, one of the spaces opened up on the Diamond, which is kind of like the center of town. And the last time that space was open was 110 years ago. So that kind of gives you the frame of reference. And then there's also a school that's a nonprofit, and they buy up a lot of the commercial spaces in town, and then they either can write off whatever if a space isn't rented out, or they kind of use it as a way to generate income for the school, which I really like the people at the school and stuff, so I can't complain. But that also means that they are kind of the landlords of a lot of the storefronts. So it doesn't really, there isn't a lot of spaces that we could go into. There is a space that's available that is, my friend Dawn used to own, called Mommy Gear. It's currently on the market for $350, but we're so kind of over our heads with mortgages that even if we, because I think that between the apartment's rent and what we would pay in rent that we would then apply to the mortgage, we could cover the mortgage easily. However, the issue then is, if your debt to income ratio and also the down payment. So unless I can come up with a down payment of like 20% of 350, um, and then be able to have closing costs and a small fund for renovations, it's not a easy prospect. Even if balancing it out, we would have more money each month in the long run. Um, you know, it's just one of those things. I see a couple more folks have. Diane says, money vibes for all. I have a show tomorrow too, but it's not a big one. Good luck, Diane. Michelle says, good luck too. So lots. Man says, one of my colleagues did offer to buy me some Kaiser buns. Well, that's nice. See, there you go. Little by little. Julie says, it's great to have options. I'm a plan A, uh, plan B kind of person. I feel ya. Marion says, but the bank probably wouldn't agree. For our mortgage, another mortgage, I agree. Somebody said, well, you could then move into one of the apartments over that storefront. And that, I mean, that is an option, but then that is one of those things where our house is one of our main sources of collateral. So I don't think you can, like, put collateral on, you can't, like, put a thing up for collateral and then sell that thing that you have been using for collateral. So it's just one of those things where we just have to, like, buckle down and really start having all the things kind of start contributing, because right now we're covering a lot of stuff on the store, like the new building in Johnstown. We have not, it's not making any money right now, so it's covering are the bead stores covering it right now. So it does make it tricksy that way. Also, we don't want to displace John and his family there, because we really like them. So we want them to be able to live in the apartment. Um, you know, so I would feel really bad about if we had to like kick him out so that we could live there. But if we have to do it, we have to do it. So I think it's one of those things where it's just going to come down to what when at the end of the year, we can have a more realistic picture of it. The area that we're moving into is not really known as like a retail place yet. It's kind of a neighborhood in transition. So it's through our efforts and the efforts of other people moving into that area who are going to kind of create that vibe. That reputation is already kind of in existence for Ligonier. So the thing is with that is, you're naturally going to have people who come to shop when they come to Ligonier. But since we have such a niche business, even if there's tons of people, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do well. There's this festival that happens once a year, every year, called Fort Ligonier Days. And when we first opened our business, we kept hearing about this and how we're going to make all this money and how the merchants make so much money that they can retire after. And when we did it, I was like, I don't know about y'all, but we did not make enough to do that. And that's mainly because things get crowded. And with buying beads, you want to be able to look and see stuff and not feel like you're getting elbowed and all that kind of business. So we don't do the same kind of numbers that some of the other people in town do. Like some of the food people, they do, like, they could buy a house. But also part of that though is just because you make that money doesn't necessarily mean that translates, because sometimes you have to pay for your overhead. So like you have to pay for your employees and you have to pay for your insurance and you have to pay for the raw good materials that you're making the funnel cakes out of or whatever. And I know that with some of this stuff, you can take very inexpensive materials and make quite a bit that way, but still you have to put that money out. So it's kind of a stressful thing. And I know some people, they're not doing it anymore. Like there are a couple different organizations that used to do food booths a lot. But they're not doing them anymore. So I kind of feel like if they were doing like super well and they were making tons of money, they'd figure something out. They'd hire an extra person or do something. But you know, it's kind of like some of the merchants, they retire, they decide that they're going to retire and close their business or whatever. And that's understandable. But if you were doing really well, wouldn't you just sell your business? Or, I don't know. In my mind, you would sell your business if it was doing that profitable. But they use that kind of excuse and it's not really an excuse, but they use that like if your shop isn't doing well, then you might as well just retire, right? So, I don't know. It's one of those things where, um, the in-store numbers are not quite where they need to be, and so we're trying to ramp stuff up to help. But if it keeps continuing like this, we are going to have to make some choices about our future. So I don't know. It's just one of those things. Marion says, because one needs to eat, but honestly, we don't need beads. Julie says, too much overhead. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like if you go into a restaurant chances are, unless you see like a rat scuttling through, if you walk into our restaurant, you're gonna eat at that restaurant. With our store, if you walk into our store, you have like a 1 in 10 chance that you're a beater, right? And you may look around and stuff, and that's cool, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna buy something. And also, what we have to buy is not always very expensive. So we have like 25-cent paper beads and $2 tubes of seed beads. So you have to sell a lot of that to pay your bills. So that's why we don't do a ton of sales in the physical store. And that's mainly because uh, the overhead is so much higher at the physical store that it eats any margins that we have, that it just eats up all the margins. So like with the online store, it costs way less to run the online store than it does the physical store. So our margins are a little bit larger, so we can do sales because we have those margins. They're a little bit fuller than in the in-store margins. So that's why we never hardly ever do sales in the physical store, because we just lose money that way, and you can't do that. I mean, it's one thing if you need a quick influx of cash flow, and it's another thing entirely if you're going to have your business model based on that, because um, it's just not really sustainable. And during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people having like 90% off sales, and unless they were charging way, 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 way more, then I can't see how people could, viably run their business with making 10% off of their sales. And then also accounting for, cost of goods and overhead. Like, and that you must have marked it up 20 times if you can offer 90% off. So I don't know. A lot of those places went out of business over the pandemic too. So for me, I don't want to go out of business. And mostly the reason why I don't want to go out of business is because I don't think I'd be really suitable for working for somebody else. I mean, I guess I could do it now, maybe where there's like remote working and stuff like that. And I've been doing stuff more with like nonprofits. So maybe I could get a job like with a nonprofit, but um as it stands, I don't think anybody would hire me, really, unless it was like as a freelancer again. Because I don't know, I've been my own boss for too long, that I don't know if people want that. Also, I'm not old, so it's not real. I don't think it's like the ageism thing yet, but I'm also not super young. So if it comes to like being up on like TikTok and Snapchat and doing all that stuff, I don't know how to do any of that. So with like social media, if it's like Facebook or Instagram, I could probably do. But if it was like a marketing job where I had to do stuff with like threads and things like that, I haven't checked in on that in like months. So I don't know. Julie says that's the artist in you. Yeah, I think I have a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge. So maybe I could go into teaching, but I don't think I could go and teach in a university necessarily because I don't have an MFA, unless they don't care about that. So I could maybe teach at like art retreats or something like that, like how I used to do more. But so, anyways, I made this brick stitch, excuse me, the circular brick stitch. And what I kind of do is I kind of walk them around, and it's almost like a puzzle. Like sometimes I'll purposely make shapes that fit kind of weird holes. And then sometimes I kind of like try to find places for them to fit. And I try not to leave any big gaps because then I have to go in and fill those somehow. So I try to naturally marry up different areas where it fits pretty good. Like this fits pretty good. It's going to make it kind of weird over here, but I think I can fill in with some seed beads. So that's not too bad. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where we've talked about this. Me and William have talked a lot about this because, it's better to be prepared than not to be prepared. In my mind, some people are like, oh, well, you're manifesting like bad stuff. But I don't know. I think it's good to be kind of practical when it comes to stuff like that. Um, so like he has a job with his other work, and I think that he could maybe move full time to that. I don't know. I don't know if he would make any more money moving full time to that and not working remotely. So I don't know. And I don't want to sound all doom and gloom because I know that that kind of sounds bad, like, people planning to fail or whatever. And that's not the case at all. It's one of those things where I just like to be prepared. So if something does happen, then we're not just like caught with our pants down kind of situation. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where we just kind of have to figure out like how hard we want to work also because the other thing about this is that like I work pretty hard now and I just can't see myself continuing this pace like indefinitely. So we'll see. I don't know. I think I could be good. I don't know. I used to work in restaurants. I don't think I'd be good at that anymore. Marion says, you do need to be practical, prepared, as well as manifest good things in your lives. Yeah, I agree with that. I shared a thing on my Instagram. One of our friends that we met through SCORE, she said it's okay to be happy with what you have, but want more also. And that sounds weird for some people. They're like, oh, I have enough. And I think for us, we're super fortunate that we have what we have. But at the same time, like, I know that I can't keep running at this pace that we are now indefinitely. It's one of those things like I know that eventually I'm just gonna either burn out or just collapse because we do run pretty hard. So, and we have been running pretty hard for the past couple of years. So I think that is the hardest part is like, we work probably 3 times as hard for half as much. And so it's like, at what point do you make the decision to change? I don't know. I think it's it's one of those questions that we ask ourselves because like we love the store and we love our town that we're in, but if it's not going to be viable, then we have to start thinking of other solutions. And I have been working more on my own personal career as an artist the past couple years. So that's also maybe where some of that tiredness comes from because I have been putting a lot of energy into that. And so I don't know. It's just something that we've been thinking about in the periphery. That's probably not the best kind of like, let's chat conversation. Be like, probably be like, did y'all see the new Barbie movie? Probably be a better one. Which we haven't, but Julie says, yes, being realistic helps with stress. And Marion says, deciding what to do is often very difficult. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we don't want to necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, also. Like, if we move to a new city, you know, even if it is significantly cheaper um, to run our business, we don't necessarily know the metrics for like what we could pull in. But lately we have a thing where we'll have like a really good day, but then we'll have like 3 bad days in a row. So it's like, it's one of those things where we're like, uh, do we keep hoping that things will get better and working on trying to build up something that may not be sustainable? I think it's one of those things where we just have to wonder what the future will hold. Because if it does get better and it goes back to pre-pandemic numbers, then it's not a non-issue. It's like a non-issue. But if the foot traffic continues to stay what it is or goes down, then we'll probably have to think about either moving the store to a new town where our overhead is less expensive, or just run the online store only. And I know a couple of people who have done that, who have moved online only. And, I sometimes think that is almost a kiss of death for some people because they're so used to operating in store that they don't really have. It's kind of like the exit interview, right? Like there's a couple of people I know who've had in-person stores, and they say they're going to move to being an online store, and then they don't realize how much work it is to have an online store. So they think that it's like the land of milk and honey, where it's like, oh, your margins are, your overhead is so much lower, you are make all this extra money. But the thing is that there's so many people out there who are doing what we do, so it's not like it's not as easy as sometimes people make it seem, because you do have to figure out a way that makes you stand out and makes you relevant. So whenever I'm talking to somebody who's thinking about starting a business, I always ask them, so what is your question? And how can you uniquely answer that question? So if somebody is making jewelry, for example, one of the things that I ask is like, what's your question? So what kind of stuff do you make? Will oftentimes relate to your question. So if your goal is to have a company that is like, an artist space one, how would you describe your style or your aesthetic, and um, how does that fill a gap in what currently exists? Because I think sometimes a lot of people, they're just like, oh, well, I'll just do this and the market will make room for me. But really, in reality, you either have to make a solution for a problem that nobody's thought of yet, or you address a problem. So I feel like with us, a lot of times it ties into what we do as an artist, but also part of what makes us different is that we spend a lot of time and energy with education and learning about the materials. And, a lot of people do that, but you'd be surprised with uh, I don't want to say anything that sounds bad, but you'd be surprised with how little people know about the things that they're trying to sell you. And that sounds weird, but it's true. There are people who they make it sound like they know a lot, but they actually don't really know that much about beading, for example. And so, and I get it, you know. So anyways, let me see. I see um Marion says Barbie, absolutely not. LOL. Michelle says if you're losing money each year, you need to decide what to do. Um, Michelle says Barbie waiting for on cable. Same with us. Sandra says online only is hard. I think, you know, a lot of things are hard. I mean, in store, if you can keep your margins really low and you can establish a very loyal customer base, or if you can establish really low overhead and have healthy margins and you have a dedicated following, you can probably do that and it will last as long as you have energy to do it. When we first opened our bead store, they one of my mentors at the time said the store will last as long as you have energy for it. And I kind of took that and it kind of ingrained itself into my mind because not too long after that, maybe a year or two after that, she kind of ran out of energy and she ended up closing her store. Um, and that kind of stuck with me because it was so true. And I feel like it's one of those things where, you know, you have to constantly pour energy in, and it's one of those things where like you can't just kind of like let it do its own thing. You kind of have to be on top of it. You have to keep on top of the what's popular, what's trending, what interests you, how to keep the costs low so that you can, you know, maneuver around. I think it does require a lot of energy. I do think on the plus sides of it, it is something that is very creative and it's very like problem solving oriented. So if you like that kind of challenge of having um, a thing where the problem is not the same every day, you know, being a small business owner, the problems are different every single day. Like if something breaks, or if you need to do something, or if you need to track something down, or for example, one of the biggest things that's happening in our industry, especially with a lot of the bead stores that make kits and that have been making the same kits for years and years, is that their suppliers are changing. So, for example, there were a lot of designers who got really, really, really in trouble because all of their designs had S word crystals in them. So they put all of their eggs in that S word crystal basket. And when they shifted their business and were going more towards luxury and not DIY sector, a lot of them got left out in the cold and got really upset about it. Um, and then just recently, Tierra Cast announced that they're closing business after 40 something years, and some of the people that's who make their toggles and their kits. That's how they make that's one of their bread and butter suppliers. So you know, they're having to scramble right now to find replacements. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see how that affects our industry. There is some talk that somebody was saying is that one of the suppliers were moving overseas. There's some more talk about one of the companies out of Providence, Rhode Island, acquiring the TRCAS molds and having things made there. I don't know. I can't say for certain who's going to do it and how that, if that's actually a real thing or if people are just gossiping. Um, we're just kind of conjecturing about what could happen. So I all I know is that the people are like the having a bead business, it's different every day. And for us, it's we are not super affected by either of those supply chain issues because they've never been really big cornerstones of our business. We do work with, and I used to work for Swarovski as a freelancer, but oh, I shouldn't have said that. As I used to work for S Word Crystal Place as a freelancer. Um, but anyway, so yeah, there is it's the different world that we're in now, where a lot of places that we thought were never going to go out of business are going out of business. So um, it does have an impact. Marion says, yeah, Tiercast is closing will have an awful effect on the industry, at least short term. It'll be interesting. I mean, some people, it's really not going to be a problem for them because they bought a lot of inventory. Excuse me. So they'll be set for a while. I think where it gets kind of dangerous is what people are willing to do when that supply runs out. So, are they going to start having things manufactured illegally? You know, are they going to take designs that exist and have them bootlegged? You know, I think that some people in our industry would not be above that. So I don't know. I kind of feel like we're in this for us personally in our business. It's easy to forget that we have a fine pewter line. So in theory, we could, if we push really hard, we could become almost a successor. Like with my family, they're artisan based and they've been in the business for a very long time. And it would be easy to think that maybe that they would be the ones to kind of fill that void. However, the sheer if you peel everything back, the thing that would be the biggest thing hurdle for that to happen would be the price. I mean, they've got the prices down as low as they can. So TierCast, one of the things that has kind of made them enduring in our industry and something that is accessible to more people is that they've kept their prices really low. So they've relied on volume over it's kind of a thing where you can either charge more and sell less or charge less and sell more. And so they were a sell more and charge less kind of business model. But as the bead world has changed, you don't have all the bead stores that you used to have as customers being constant advocates for your product, basically. So that's one of those things where if you don't have those ambassadors out there preaching the good word of it, then it's harder and harder to do that. So the idea would then be, do you charge more and alienate your customers that you've established, that customer base that you've built up over the past 40 something years? So I don't know, I can understand why certain decisions were made about why they did that. And, I think some people are going to be really messed up because they relied so heavily on those clasps. And so I don't know. It's going to be one of those things where it's interesting to see what happens next. And I'm friends with a lot of the people who have just lost their jobs or will lose their jobs. So it's really hard for me to see people who I care about genuinely um, go through a hard time now. So, I can understand very easily why they're having challenges. Um, so yeah. So William, he just texted me and he said he's going to be at the pottery firing until midnight tonight. Marion says, considering bootlegging goes on now, I guess that is a possibility. I think it's a very real possibility because sometimes there are certain people who they're not necessarily very ethical in our business. And I'm not going to say who is like that, but there are people who, if you prevented, I think that's, I don't want to get in trouble, but I think it's one of those things where you could easily, uh, that could easily become an issue. Um, so I don't know. I do like their products, and I do like that they're always kind of innovating, which is another thing. So they're very good about asking like what the current trends are and kind of staying up to date with that. Not everybody does that. So I think that they're very clever to work on, especially with different partnerships. So like they're really good about like working with Swarovski if they have a new shape, or working with Esper Crystal when they have a new shape. They were really good about that. Um, they would make certain things that would fit those components. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Are there any people in the industry that y'all miss? I miss a bunch of people in the industry, actually. I was going through some of my bead collection, and that's one of the things. Like I was getting a little bit choked up because I was thinking about some of the people who, especially artisan made beads, who they're no longer with us, and so that was a little bit hard to do. Um, but yeah, guess that's life. William says, I'll be here till midnight at the kiln tonight. It's the best time slot, and they needed another person to sign up. William, if you send me the address for the place, I can try to go out there and maybe bring you food. I don't know if you are hungry or not, but I can bring you dinner. Marion says, stay awake, William, but be safe on your way home. Usually he's out till like 4 nowadays, so he'll be fine. But that's good of you to keep an eye on him, make sure he's safe. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where our industry is in a lot of change right now. It's in flux. And so it's one of those things where I don't know. Like for our sales, we've kind of also had to like adjust kind of our sales pitches. We made some decisions that, I don't want to say in hindsight I would have made them differently, but we made some decisions earlier this year that definitely impacted our financial bottom line. So I know that like there were things that were like a lot of work and they were kind of had their own issues, but it did take a chunk out of our profit or our money that we pulled in. So that was less than good. But in other ways, it was nice because I don't have to deal with certain things. Um, so I don't know. Marion says, but is he usually driving? After all, there are other idiots on the road. Maybe. Sometimes. We sometimes stay at the cottage until pretty late. So, um, but that's good to keep keep him in your thoughts. I'll have to ask him if he wants me to bring him dinner. I know he wants me to feed the kittens when I get off the live. And I do think that the industry is one of those ones where it's constantly in flux, where there were certain people who were in business that we thought would never go out of business. Um, and there are companies like that, went out of business, like Interweave went out of business and they got bought up and they're still running now, but I don't think they're publishing jewelry magazines anymore. So I think it's one of those things where, I don't know, our industry has changed a lot. I wonder if other people back in the day had the same kind of issues. I know with Esford Crystal, one of their 5-star dealers, she kind of sprung it on them and told them that they were selling their company. And that was like a huge blow for them. So I don't know. Julie says Fusion Beads from Seattle. Yeah, that was a huge one. And I don't really think that anybody has really taken up that space that they vacated on like Amazon. I know that when they went out of business, that was a big kind of shift for them. And I miss them a lot because they were good people. I used to hang out with Katie and Lindsay, and we went to Marie's house a couple times, and that was nice. But yeah, there's actually a lot of people. Miriam says a lot of the magazines also went digital. Yeah, I think that they went digital, but I was talking with one of the editors, and they're not actively seeking new content. So some of the stuff that they're publishing is stuff that was written years ago. And so they're just repurposing old content, which, I guess some things is fine, especially if you're doing like basics and stuff. But like, how excited can you be about shapes that they don't really make beats for anymore? It's like one of those things where, I don't know, I'm going to get in trouble talking about this kind of stuff. But it is a Let's Chat day. And so that's what I've been kind of thinking about lately is like, where do we go if things change for our business? I think we're pretty lucky though, in the sense that we were early adopters for a lot of stuff. So even though in a lot of ways we're the underdog for a lot of stuff, like there are some people who they do way more in sales than we do. I can guarantee you they do more than that because I know their numbers and I know our numbers. And I think also one of the blessings in disguise, if you think about what we went through when we opened our store with very little. So I mean, I used to repurpose paper and like seed bead tubes, people just throw them away. I would clean them and sanitize them and take glue on and take the labels off, and we would reuse our seed bead tubes and I mean, that was like a fractions of pennies that I was trying to save. But so because we came up from very little, I think um, for us, it's one of those things where we know what hard times look like, so we kind of know how to navigate those things. Where some of the people, when they're rolling up in their Mercedes Benz or brand new Mercedes, it's harder for them because they don't know what it's like to do that. They haven't had to do that. Some people have always just uh, been super lucky and had a lot of they've been industry leaders for a long time, and now it's a different world. So I don't know, it's interesting to think about. I know I say I don't know a lot, but that's because I don't know. It's one of those things where it's almost like a call and response, and I know that drives some people crazy, but it's kind of like, for me, I don't always know the answers to things, but if I talk them out, then I kind of will figure out a plan that way. I don't know if y'all are like that. I know, like with William and I, we have very different ways of thinking of it. He's a very linear thinker. Like, he likes to know all the things beforehand, so he's not like surprised. And I get that, but I also, in a lot of stuff, you don't know what's going to happen. Um like when we'll do a project, I won't know all the things that are going to happen, so I have to kind of think on the thing on the fly about what the issues are and kind of prioritize the need for certain things over others, and then kind of make allowances for the things that we can do. And so figuring things out on the fly, it's kind of like the difference between cooking with a recipe and then cooking with ingredients that you don't know. It's almost like an episode of Chop sometimes, where sometimes you're lucky, you can get all the ingredients you want and they're all there and you can afford them, and you can get them at your local grocery store. And then other times there are situations where, I don't know if you want to see closer to that or not, but there are other times when you just don't know, but you have certain ingredients, and the goal is then to come up with something that is delicious and nutritious and is good with what you've got. So Julie says, "Thank you, Andrew." Michelle says, "I would cry if Mayuki went out of business. They have been making a lot of changes lately and making me worried." Yeah, a lot of the Japanese companies, uh, I don't know. I really honestly don't know, because they're um, so in the enameling world, this is a recent kind of event. Um, One of the main suppliers of a certain type of enamel, he passed away. And a lot of those things, the recipes, he was the only person who knew the recipes. So his grandson, I think, or maybe his son, inherited the business. And so they're having to do a thing where he's trying to figure things out and get the supply chain figured out. And they're really having to scramble. And I think they've kind of figured it out, but it is one of those things where it was a very proprietary thing, and some of those things were kept close to the chest. The same thing with like PMC. PMC is made by Mitsubishi, which is an auto manufacturer. It was originally designed for components for computers and circuit boards, and then it became like a craft material, or an artist material. But even their business, they stopped making PMC. So a lot of people have built up inventory over the years, and have that. But even small stuff, like things you don't even think about, like one of the things in the enameling people use all day, all the time to clean their copper was this product called Penny Bright. And Penny Bright was made in Ohio, and it's a non-toxic um, cleaner, and it has it's like a thicker. It's got more of a grit to it. It's like salt and citrus, and so it cleans the copper and it cleans it really well. And it's used to be you could buy it at the grocery store. They stopped formulating that Penny Bright. So now people are charging like 5 times as much for what they have in stock left, which is not many people have that. And then the other thing is or they'll try to sell this stuff called Rights Cleaner, and it's like WRIGHT, and it works, but it's not as good. It's like it's actually kind of creamy, which is kind of nice, but at the same time, it doesn't clean as aggressively as Penny Bright. So things like that you don't even think about, like how will that impact enameling, for example? And so people have had to come up with other solutions, and some of them for the better, some of them for the worse. I don't know. For me, I want to get a sandblaster because I hate scrubbing fire scale off of copper. And I want to start enameling on steel for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons why is just to keep the cost a little bit more affordable. I know, like for pieces that I do in silver, it's just cost prohibitive, not only for me to make, but also for others to buy. And so, like, to get that price point like down to like a sweet spot, I'm trying to investigate different materials to use so that that can be an option. And yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting to see how a lot of the jewelry industry is pivoting right now. And I think part of it is that the pandemic, when it first hit, some of these companies were not necessarily directly impacted. Like everybody was impacted, but they were not, they weren't impacted right away. So it's like a ripple effect where um, it took a while for some of these things to start coming undone more. So there were problems before the pandemic, and the pandemic made a lot of things worse. But it is one of those things where things start to unravel when you're put in a state of crisis. Um, and maybe I've been watching too much Foundation, where they're like the first crisis, the second crisis, but in a real way, that's kind of like how a lot of industries work, where if you have different kind of environmental impacts that shift your business, like for instance, um, a couple years ago, by a couple, I mean almost. When was 2008. So things like the housing bubble, for example, that had a huge impact on precious metals. People started hoarding precious metals, and so the price of silver um, almost tripled. So nobody could afford to work with silver. Silver at one point was like $12 a troy ounce, and it skyrocketed up to 45 to $52 a troy ounce. So a lot of manufacturers who were relying on those things, they ended up not being able to use those. So they had to quickly pivot, and there were companies that were kind of like waiting in the wings that felt like Vintage, for example, were manufacturers and suppliers of raw brass. So for a hot minute, there were all of these companies making things in brass and in bronze and in all these other metals that had kind of fallen out of fashion at one point. They used to be like the biggest manufacturers in the world. Like Providence used to be the center of the jewelry world for many years. And then when things were kind of outsourced and kind of the customer demand change, a lot of those things kind of fell away. And so the jewelry industry in Providence is kind of struggling along. But at one point, they were kind of like, there was a resurgence because nobody could afford to use silver. So, it's one of those things where I get nervous a little bit when they start talking about some of the new flat screen TVs needing to use silver in them, because uh, those industries can very easily buy up a lot of silver, so it can kind of make that kind of supply and demand situation get kind of tricksy, and the price could go up again. So I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm trying to navigate. Even steel, the price of steel has gone up, and with some of the restrictions with certain companies not being able to import from other countries, and how certain wars on the other side of the planet are affecting trade routes and tariffs and stuff like that. Even that has affected, the price of materials. So we are in a state of change. So I think for us, we're such a small part of a very much uh, bigger machine. So I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it's interesting to see what we can do to make things a little bit more sustainable, and to think about how we can incorporate things, design ideas and inspirations that kind of utilize things that people already have, but also creating a product that is desirable to people and will continue to sustain us as a business. So I think it's one of those things where we're moving into where William and I are having to think about things in a different way. Like, where do we spend the energy to focus on, and like what will yield the greatest results, and kind of plant the seeds for future endeavors. So I don't know. It's one of those things that we're thinking about. Marian says, and sometimes you just have to go with the flow and accept the ups and downs in life. Yeah, I think that you do have to kind of let go at some point and kind of acknowledge that. For us, I think if we want to continue to be relevant in our industry, we are forced to acknowledge the challenges and come up with solutions to face them. And that's one of the reasons why I've been more interested in doing other things than what I used to do, because what I used to do is very different from what I do now. And some of you all who have been with us for a long time probably have sensed that and have seen the changes over the years. And part of the reasons why I do things differently now, part of it is because I'm getting older, and I know that I'm not like old, but I am older than I was, and I just physically can't do certain things that I used to be able to do. Um, and so there are changes with that. Like, I used to make pendants by hand for every single kit that we made. And keep in mind, we've done hundreds and hundreds of kits at this point. And I used to go into production, and every month I would make a new design. I would press out each one of those designs by hand, and I made hundreds of that one design. Nowadays, I don't do that anymore. Um, and because I can't, because it was getting to the point where my hands just could not keep up with that. Like, I would wake up and my knuckles would be swollen because I had been pressing coins out for hours and hours and hours, and it would just be painful to even pick up a glass of water. Um, and so nowadays, we are trying to implement different technologies that try to take some of that burden off of my hands. I still don't want to get away from handmade things because I find a lot of satisfaction in making things by hand. But at the same time, I have to be cognitive that I can't keep doing what I'm doing, and because eventually either you burn out or you burn out. So I don't know. Michelle said that's a lot. Yeah, I'm probably like making you all get like nervous or something about the fate of the bead world and different things like that. And but that's kind of the stuff like probably I'm introducing you to some of my anxiety driven rantings about the future of the bead business. One thing that grounds me whenever I get kind of lost in that kind of upheaval is that I remind myself that body adornment is the oldest marker of civilization before written word, before clay pots, before agriculture. There has always been some form of body adornment in civilized history throughout all of time, all around the world, in every culture, throughout all of time, there has always been some form of body adornment. Sometimes those things mean vastly different things. There are things about status. There are things about um, societal trends and fads, and all of those different things about economics, about how things, displaying marital status. There's tons of different things of why things mean certain things, and those all have changed over the years, the many millennia. But I kind of have to remind myself that it's a good reminder that whether or not the industry that we know will endure, um, beading and jewelry and body adornment, I think as long as there's humans, will endure for forever. It's one of those things that is so intrinsically linked to the human condition that I think that, things may be different, you know, but there'll always be some form of body adornment, and there will never not be. And we're a part of something much bigger than ourselves. We're a part of something that, we're a part of something that connects us in a link to a chain that stretches back before there was, a word for chain. There was before there was a word for connection. So I don't know. I think that grounds me and humbles me, and whenever I get kind of lost in these kind of worries or this anxiety about how we'll survive or how we'll make it, I am reminded that no matter what, humans throughout all of history have always had some kind of adornment. And that I think that's one of the things that makes us human. Uh, it's something that is so characteristic of people, and sometimes animals too, but mostly people. And I think it's one of those things that, it's something that does connect us and something that we can bond over. For instance, like right now, I am talking out my mouth about certain things, and there are those of you out there who are listening who are not directly in front of me, who are many, many miles apart, and we've been brought together by these little things called beads. So I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. And yeah, so do not lose faith. Don't despair. You know, no matter what happens in our industry, and you know, we will prevail in some form or fashion out there. There'll always be a desire to make, I think. So there you go. All right. So I've been talking for about 2 hours now. I probably could talk for about 4 more hours. But since William is going to that staying late for the pottery, I don't know how they're going to do it if they have to like sit in the rain because it looks like it might rain. Um, but I should go and do chores around the house and help out with that. But I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I know this was kind of a little bit different, um, you know, than some of our lives. I guess not terribly different. We haven't done a Let's Chat in a while. So hopefully you all are doing well out there. We care about all of you in the AG Bead fam. We want you to be happy, whole, and healthy, and wish only the best for all of you out there. I think that since we have this community, we're super lucky. Not everybody has that. And so it's a good thing. So, anyways, I will see y'all later. And we'll be back on Monday. We might do some check ins. Maybe William will do a check in from the firing because I think that could be cool. I'll have to send him a message and say, go take a video or go do a live from there because I think that could be cool. Especially if you haven't seen that before. All right. Well, have a great night and have a great weekend. See ya.